Hey everybody, it's Eric from the Mature Minded Gamers Group. We are a group of adult gamers who have jobs and lives, but also several passions, including board gaming, video gaming, and much more. You can check out all of our content on our website, maturemindedgamers.com. What's up, everyone? It's Eric from the Mature Minded Gamers, and today we're going to review Picard Episode 6, The Impossible Box. And today I have my standard bridge crew with me today, Brad and Will.
Hey, hey.
Hey, hey.
All right, guys. So this episode starts out with Soji having her dream that we seen in the trailer, the New York Comic Con trailer back in July actually of last year, and we just seen a quick glimpse of it, and so we finally figure out what's going on. She basically walks into what looks like a room with some plants and flowers, which we know her father was a botanist, and so we can assume that's where she was going. We can see the back of a man's head, and then he yells at her, and she wakes up. So when she wakes up, there's Narek with her, and he starts playing some mind games with her right from the start. You can tell he's kind of still trying to slowly break her. Did you guys pull anything from the dream sequence or the scene with Narek afterwards?
I'm nothing that I think is worth talking about now because I think we get a lot more into this dream sequence later on in the episode. So maybe we should cover it then.
I was
Alright.
kind of surprised to actually see dreams at all.
That's a good point. And I think even when Narek is talking to his sister later on, they both seem surprised by it too. So it is something. It is an interesting feature, and I liked how the episode plays around that here in a little bit, like Brad said, we'll talk about here in a second. So next up, we see Dr. Girardi is explaining how Maddox died to Picard, and it looks like she's going to get away scot-free right now. But we know there's a lot of evidence. You can tell by her confidence that she's definitely probably has not cleaned up the trail correctly. So somebody's going to be able to figure out what's going on. But for now, it looks like she's going to get away with it, which is interesting.
Well, Elron knows something's wrong, and
Uh,
I think that's going to come into play here after a bit. Like he knows that she's done something. She even says to him that he's crossed the line when he tries to, almost he tries to console her, but he more or less alienates her, and so I think that's going to be what's going to get her in trouble.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing his "I'm going to tell you exactly what I think" mentality coming out because
Right,
he does
but
it.
not. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say he does it a couple times in this episode.
Not to jump ahead though, but that definitely isn't going to happen, Brad.
Why?
Oh, because Elnor is. Where does he leave at the end of the episode?
So they all left. Well, I mean, like you said, not to jump too far ahead, but they all kind of left it at the same place. I mean, the only two people that escaped were something we'll talk about later. Like, I don't know. I think that's not going to make a difference. I don't think Elnor's in trouble.
So the other thing that happens in this scene is we see Picard is really haunted by his past experience with the Borg, which I found a little interesting because, the whole Next Generation, after he's assimilated there at the end of season 3, he doesn't really talk a lot about it. It doesn't seem to bother him as much as you would think at certain episodes when they encounter the Borg. But now we see it's really shaking him, and he's having a lot of memories. So what do you guys think of that? Did you think it was a little weird that it's affecting him so much now compared to as it did in the past?
I don't. I think he's an older man, and he's had other ghosts that have cropped up to haunt him, and I think this is just one more thing. I mean, excuse me. I think that just the sheer weight of everything weighing on his conscience probably has brought this closer to the top of the surface, and being on an actual board cube like this probably just resurfaced a lot of old trauma. We addressed a little bit of this in First Contact, and at that point he met the Queen face to face, which was something that not a lot of Borg drones would have done, and especially escaped Borg drones. For her to have the sort of attention to him that she did probably played a lot in that too. So I think we're looking at layers here.
All right, so we see Picard go back to his ready room or his chateau that he's made, and he instantly looks up Hugh and the cube and Locutus, I think he even says, or maybe just a picture of this shows up. They did a fantastic job in this scene of overlaying it over his face and how he's like reaching for the implants, and just proving even more that it affected him a lot. But I wanted to mention that because I thought it was a really great scene. I thought they did a fantastic job with it. Picard seemed surprised that Hugh was on the cube, in my opinion. So I don't know if he just kind of stayed away from information on the cube because of his experience or what. But this seems like something that would be common knowledge, because I thought Hugh worked for the Romulans on the cube, but he says later on in the episode that since he's a Federation citizen, that he can come and go. So I don't really know how that all works, but I found that kind of interesting. Next up, we get Rios practicing some soccer. So we talked about the soccer ball in the trailer, who's going to be the one playing it. And I kind of forgot about that conversation until we seen it was Rios, and I was like, oh, this kind of makes sense. So he's playing some soccer, and then here comes Dr. Girardi, and look what happens. Who called it, boys? That was me. So we get a very...
Emotional?
See, I don't know. Was it that emotional? It almost seemed like desperation, but maybe. I mean, you can tell she's struggling. And, Rios is obviously a broken character. We've picked that up from these 6 episodes. Now, is it a love? Are they going to be a couple? No. And you can tell that. Anything you guys picked up?
Again, I don't know that there's a lot to glean here other than the fact that she's struggling and he was sort of at arm's length and was the most available character for what she thought she needed in the moment. And I'll be honest, I don't know that I was a huge fan of that. I know you called it, but it seemed sort of, I don't know, it cheapened her character to me. She, the first couple episodes, she came across as just somebody different than she is right now. So I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's not. I just think I haven't figured her character out yet. So I don't know if I'm disappointed or not. But I think it might have been just a little too much. I don't know. It seemed unnecessary.
Think what she's went through, though, Brad. So she spent her whole life working at Daystrom, building these robots with Maddox, doing something she thought was, important and amazing. And then all of a sudden she gets this news that everything she's done was bad. And, we assume caused the synth attack or did something else worse, like something bad has happened and we don't know yet. But so all of her beliefs or thoughts that she had before just came up to her as being completely false and wrong. So think of like a kid, who thinks of, well, gosh, I don't want to spoil it. Never mind. But, I think you know where I'm going with that. Finds out the truth of something that they believed for a long time.
Yeah, it makes total sense for somebody who's been all through that to, kill somebody and then look for some cheap ass. Mm-hmm. I think it makes total sense.
I think you're seeing desperation. I mean, hooking up with somebody makes way more sense than killing somebody. So if she's already that desperate, this just seems to go along with the character change for me, at least.
Well, I think her thought process is obviously skewed by what she was told from O or whatever. I can't remember that character's name. Was it O?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, what she's told from there. So, we don't know what she was told from O, and we don't really know everything that Maddox has, kind of in the pipeline or what his real end game goal is for the synths, and what had actually happened. All we know is what we've seen, and that we're still kind of trying to gauge what that actually end result is supposed to be. Who's deceiving who, and where's the story actually going? We're starting to flesh out a little bit, but we're still not seeing what the whole aspect of the sense. But back to like her character, her emotional state, I can understand her wanting to have someone that I guess wants her and wants to be close to someone because she doesn't want to be alone with her thoughts. And I really think she's just trying to escape find some sort of escape from that sitting alone, because she, what does he say? He says something like, sure, you want to do this or whatever. You sure you're okay? He's like, well, I'll be. What did she say? Something like, well, you think this will help? And she goes, it may help for a couple hours, but
Well,
then she's going to be alone again.
Even before that, though, she says that she's got this uncanny ability of recognizing when she's making a mistake as she's making it.
Right. Well, obviously she knows it's a mistake, and but she still, when she stops and thinks about it again, she decides, you know what? I don't want to be alone right now. Well, because she did something completely stupid.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's it.
I was going to say that, like, when she made that statement, like, that was sort of a redeeming moment for me, where she's making the statement that, she's recognizing she's getting ready to make a mistake. And to me, and the character that they portrayed her to this point, it would have made more sense for her to pull back and to go into reserve mode and not into full force escapism mode. Like, everything she's done, or the way that she's been as a character up till now, has been kind of easily shaken and typical scientist sort of, maybe that's not the way to put it, but like not the adventurer that the others have been. So I don't know. It just seemed out of character. It really seemed out of character. It seemed more in character for her to pull away at that moment.
I agree before she killed Maddox. After that, though, I think her character just completely changed.
Absolutely.
So, and also you're forgetting the main part of this, Brad. Shirtless Rios was, I'm a straight man, but he looked good. He was hot. I see why he kept the scars. All right, so next up, what?
I just don't know what to say about that.
You agree with me. It's fine. See, I don't understand that. I can always appreciate both men and women both. I would appreciate it that much, but
there's a pretty healthy amount of this episode you're gonna have to cut out.
No kidding.
What? Why would I cut that out? I'm so confused. You can't appreciate another human being?
Oh, I can. You just framed it in, like.
Dude, okay, you don't wish you looked like Rios without a shirt on?
I look like Rios without a shirt on. Boom!
Oh my gosh.
All right, so next scene, we get Narek and his sister, and they are having a nice talk about what he's working on with Soji. And we finally see this cube, which I find very interesting. Seems like basically a Romulan puzzle box type of cube. And he's talking to his sister, and we see the difference between them come up even more. How he's more calculated, takes his time, he solves problems, and she's more of, let's get to the point, which we kind of already seen how she handled Dodge compared to how he's handling Soji.
I was kind of curious at the beginning when he comes running into the room saying, "Don't touch that, it's mine, you're gonna break it." I just kind of felt like almost like protective of this little box, and it led you to know that there's gonna be something else coming up with this little thing, this little device. And when the little guy popped out at the end, he's like, "You just don't have the patience," blah blah blah. And that little figurine popped out. I was kind of like, "Well, what is that? What does that actually represent? That little figure? Does anybody know?"
I think it was just supposed to be the toy, because she references, "I always just want to smash this and get to the toy." So I think that was just kind of supposed to be the prize, but it may have meant more. I thought the other part of the title of this episode, The Impossible Box, was partly because of Picard's mind and the things he's going through with, being assimilated and everything, and going back to the cube, which is, a box. All right, so next scene, we are back on the ship, and the crew is talking about how they're going to actually get onto the cube once they get there. All right, so now we're back on the bridge, and they are trying to figure out how they're going to get onto the cube once they arrive. And we get a nice scene with Raffi, and she is basically going to work her way in through a Federation contact that she still has. But before she does that, you can tell she is wasted, and she just takes more drugs. Everybody looks disappointed in her. Her short-term sobriety didn't last very long, and she's back using again. But she worked some magic, man. I thought that was pretty impressive, the way she worked was she an admiral? She had 4 pips. Is that an admiral, Brad? Will?
I believe it was.
I believe it was, but I don't really know.
High up, and they have obviously an old time relationship, which they talk about, and she kind of still talks her into forcing her hand to make her to allow them to get Picard onto the ship. So I thought it was a really cool scene. I liked it a lot, and you could tell it hurt Raffi at the end when that lieutenant said, "This is the end of us. Basically, we're no longer friends." Is kind of how I took it. don't ever contact me again. And you can tell it kind of hurt her.
Well, I think it hurt her because she just lost her, son from ever wanting to contact her again, not to be able to see her granddaughter ever again. And now she's losing one of her oldest friends, as far as like your colleagues, they have a lot of history according to that conversation. So I mean, it's just more people that, she's has in her life that doesn't want anything to do with her.
When Rios takes Raffi back to her room and lays her down, and they have this little heartfelt conversation, you can kind of tell that she knows that she was a bad mother and that she's probably never going to see her son or granddaughter again. I really like the line that Rios has at the end where nobody's perfect, like we all make mistakes, which I thought was a really good kind of fitting thing for Raffi to hear, but it's too bad I think she'd already passed out. But
I just thought the disapproving look that Picard gave Raffi when she started smoking whatever drug she's smoking, I thought it was pretty crazy, that look of disappointment that Picard gave her. But I'm really still confused by, obviously she's drugged out and she was able to act that she was sober, but everybody gave her a round of applause at the end for succeeding. And part of me is like, man, just instead of a round of applause, how about saying, hey, look what you can accomplish when you're not on drugs all the time, was kind of my takeaway. I was kind of confused by the applause.
I never thought about that point there. I see it, but at the same time, I think they were all just so excited because they actually got onto the cube they didn't think they're going to be able to get onto. And the line at the end that Rios gives her is, "No one gets all of it right," which I thought was a really good line. The other thing that I forgot to mention earlier, the Starfleet Admiral that Raffi's having a conversation with mentions something interesting that I was going to ask you guys about. He says the Romulans have been in a bad mood for 250 years. Is that a reference to how long the Federation and the Romulans have known each other, or something else? Anybody know?
Yeah, I mean, 250 years prior to that would have been about the time that they had the first real encounter with Starfleet and would have closed off their borders.
Okay, so to make sure I didn't miss anything there. That's kind of what I was thinking too, but I wasn't sure. So they finally arrive at the cube, and Picard, having permission to beam over, is ready to go, but Eleanor wants to go with him. But Picard tells him to stay. So as he beams over, he's almost instantly haunted. We see him having a bunch of flashbacks. He starts to stumble, and then all of a sudden, these Borgs wake up and are trying to grab him. And, I kind of was thinking, what's going on here? And then all of a sudden, Hugh comes in and says, you look like you're about to fall. They're trying to help you. Picard snaps out of it, and you see that these aren't actual Borgs. They're ex-Borg that have been brought back in and are living on the cube, and they were honestly just trying to help him, which was kind of a really cool scene. And then the whole greeting with Picard and Hugh I thought was fantastic. I liked the emotions in both characters. It was just a fantastic reunion, probably the best one I've seen so far.
Yeah, it was definitely cool to see Hugh interact with Picard again. I think it's something that we've all kind of been anticipating since we saw the Hugh character back in this, or we knew that Hugh was going to be in this show. I loved it as well. I think it was great. I think that it sort of worked out exactly how I wished it would in my mind, including the parts where the other Borg interacted with him and wanted to help him out. I think he's probably revered both as as Picard and as Locutus to some of these people, because even though some of them may not know exactly who he is, it's been ingrained in their psyche that he's somebody to revere, I suppose.
Right, and later on, you do hear one of the Borg call him Locutus. I liked how disorienting it was and how they portrayed that. I really felt like I was there with Picard and trying to get a focus on really what was going on and just the anxiety level that he must have been feeling at that moment was just off the charts. And you really kind of felt that in that scene right before he started talking to Hugh.
All right, in the next scene, Soji is talking to Narek, and she mentions that she fell asleep last night when she was talking to her mother. And Narek tells her that they've been flagging her communications as they track it all, and that all of her conversations only last 70 seconds, which obviously triggers something in Soji, and she doesn't believe him. So she calls her mom back and forcefully is like stabbing herself, trying to stay awake. But it all fails, and she ends up falling back asleep. But as soon as she wakes up, she must remember everything because she freaks out. We see her pulling out all these old photos, and her teddy bear was there. And she's scanning it with this device that tells you when how old an item is. I don't know if they ever named that device, but she's scanning them all, and everything's coming up as 37 months old. And so, just over 3 years ago, all this stuff was made. And Soji's starting to realize that everything she knows is fake.
Expected. I mean, the trajectory they were heading with Narek and her, it always kind of led back to this. And this is the exact sort of theory that we had, or hypothesis that we had earlier in the series, was that she had just been created, a handful of years ago, and all of these memories had just been implanted. So I think that it was a good scene to see this come to fruition and kind of give us what we were expecting and wanted to see.
Right, because the next scene is her and Narek. Narek's trying to help her. He's going to take her to do some special meditation, I think is what it was called. It had a special name like Zok Mok or something like that. I didn't write it down. Some kind of special Romulan thing that supposedly only Romulans can do. And so he takes her to this room, and the guard doesn't want to let her in. Narek has to threaten him basically to get in. But then we get one of the coolest scenes, I think, in this episode. Narek is basically walking her through her dream and getting the answers that he's been trying to get. And I thought they did a fantastic job of this. He slowly is trying to help her face it and face her fears and figure out what's going on. At the same time, he's trying to help locate where her home is. I just thought that scene was fantastic. He did a great job. I liked in the background how Narek's sister was watching, and then as soon as she heard, the 2-moon planet with thunderstorms, she went to go look for it immediately. And so after the scene's over, and we find out she basically has seen her father building her or her sister on the table. It's just, obviously it's not a real memory, but it's basically herself.
So what's the point of this implanted memory, though?
It's not really a memory. It's herself creating a memory for her to understand that she's not real. If that makes sense.
Right. Okay. So how did any of this come about? And I'm just still curious about how the dream is actually being created. Does that make sense? Like, I still want to know how the synth is actually dreaming.
Because she was programmed to. I mean, it sounds like that they programmed her with the same sort of subconscious that we have that puts together, things that make sense and doesn't make sense. It's sort of the reconciliation program for her.
Sure, and I understand she's interpreting that as a dream or whatever, but I'm still just kind of curious to learn more about how that's actually why I guess it's happening, and how they've kind of made this like synth that completely has emotion and can have these dreams and whatever. I'm just I don't know.
I think that's why
an episode of The Next Generation where Data had a dream program. I mean, it's not too out of character for this to occur because, I mean, even decades previous, there was something that was being experimented, and if Data was doing it, then God knows that Maddox was aware of it, and that Maddox expanded on and moved beyond that. So I don't know that the dream portion is so hard to believe. At least for me, the fact that it's happening subconscious to her is I think a little more scary, because I think it is almost the Battlestar Galactica here. Like, we don't know who all sense now at this point because they act so much like human. I mean, there's a good chance that they're not the only two.
Yeah, I think that's what we're seeing. I don't think these are planted memories. I think these are her brain working like a human brain, how we create dreams and stuff on our own based off our experiences. And I think that's what we're seeing. It's trying to show us that she's the most human-like, basically, android ever, is how I took it.
No, and I get that. I'm just more excited and curious on the why it's all happening now, and what these dreams are really how that's gonna impact the story.
So Narek plays his final card, and basically, once he gets her to the end and she realizes it, he tells her, yes, you're fake. And he unlocks this cube that has radiation poisoning of some sort in it and locks her in, and she is left to die, but she activates, blows a hole through the floor, which I didn't really like that scene, but Anyways, blows a hole through the floor as Picard and Hugh are actually searching for her, and she shows up on their scans finally, and they end up meeting the floor underneath or something somewhere. I didn't like this whole. I didn't like how they set this up. We get a really cool scene though after that where they are running basically from the Romulans, and Hugh knows how to get into a secret passageway, which seems to just kind of unlock as they're running. I don't think any of them really knew where they were going until they got there, and we get a really cool scene where they unlock the Borg Queen's habitat or whatever they called it, her sleeping chamber, I guess, whatever it was. And she's got a special teleporter in there that we've seen a little bit in Voyager, right? Didn't they try to use this in Voyager?
That I don't remember. I think it was Voyager, but I
Well,
couldn't remember.
It wasn't it the Next Generation where you had the different different spatial anomalies opening up, and they could be teleported to different planets. And
Yeah,
they even said
that
that they assimilated them.
yeah, those guys did not get assimilated.
That's what Hugh said.
No, you're talking about two different species. The one that had to do with the Next Generation, it was I'm trying really hard to remember this without looking it up.
Well, since you don't know, then I'm right. Just messing with you.
No, I'm just thinking about trying to remember who it was.
But anyway, so he said they assimilated these people, right? And got this technology.
Yeah, that's what they said.
So I looked this up. So this was a Voyager episode where the Scarians, I think is how you say their name. They say it in this episode, I forget. They have a spatial trajector technology that lets you go up to 40 light years away, and that's what they reference in this episode too. And apparently, even Hugh says that this wasn't here when you were a Borg. That we have captured them since then, and we use this technology, the Borg for the Borg Queen, basically. And so this was in one of the episodes. I don't remember the episode very well. I vaguely remember Voyager trying to use it, but not being able to for some reason. That's how Picard and Soji are going to escape. But obviously the Romulans are coming in. And for some reason, Elnor doesn't want to go because they have to protect it from being destroyed, which I didn't quite understand because it looked like when Picard and Soji walked in, they just were instantly teleported. So I didn't really understand that, unless they're just trying to hide the technology, possibly. But we get a scene where Elnor cuts a couple more people in half real quick, and him and Hugh are going to basically close shop. And we get the closing scene was fantastic. We get the door shutting, and then we hear Elnor say his famous line, "Please, my friend, choose to live." What do you guys think of this scene and the whole episode?
I'm curious to see for basically on the next episode, they it kind of showed that Hugh is being tortured. So I'd like to see what happened to Elnor. Did Elnor die, in the fight, and Hugh survived? I mean, it's kind of up in the air as far as what happened next. Obviously, we kind of know that Hugh survived at least, but what's going to happen with the Borg cube is Hugh going to be able to still keep control of it, or is it just the Romulans going to take back control? I mean, he's the director. Obviously, and you also the Romulans are obviously feel like they were attacked from this diplomat. So does that mean the Federation's going to have to intervene? Are they going to come to Picard's rescue? So many questions. But overall, I like the episode. I thought it's bringing some cohesiveness to the characters as opposed to two diverting storylines. You have now they're converging to create one concise character pool. And I think we're going to have some direct conflicts, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I'm excited for what's next as well. We're already past the midway point of the season, so we've got to start reaching some conclusions or some things that are going to start feeding us into the next season pretty soon. So I think it's pretty evident that we're going to move the pin a little further when we meet up with Riker and Deanna next episode. So far I'm more pleased now with where the season's going than I was 2 episodes ago. I really liked this episode for a lot of reasons. There were a handful of things that I did not like, which I've sort of already expressed, but seeing the cube, seeing the cube like this was a lot more advanced than I would have expected. But I'm not bothered by that. I think it was kind of cool the way that the cube was a little more modern and a little more organized than I think previous cubes were. So that was interesting. The idea that that we're getting X-Borgs, we're getting more of them, and they're becoming more prevalent in the episodes. I think that's going to be important for later. My wild guess for the next couple of episodes is there's going to be a revolt on the artifact, and the Romulans are going to get their tails kicked off of it by the X-Borg. That's just my thought.
Well, that's a good point. Do you think they're going to try to come to Locutus's rescue? Because one of them identified Locutus, so they know.
Maybe. I don't
'Cause if
know.
one knows, they all would know, right?
I don't know that they're all still connected, but and they really haven't established how much. I mean, we know that some of their memory of being a drone is still retained, but they really haven't established how much, or if it's the same for everybody. So that may have just been one or maybe a handful of drones that really recognized him as Locutus, but there probably were a handful of others that also knew him as Picard. So that's hard to tell, but I think just being an X-Borg or even them kind of doing what they're doing to Hugh is going to cause maybe a revolt that's gonna get the Romulans booted off of there, and I'm totally cool with that.
I don't know though, because I know that Patrick Stewart did not want this show to be a Borg show. He didn't want the Borg to be like centralized to the story.
Right. And that's where I think that maybe this is a way to exit the Borg. I mean, the fact that we've gotten to the point now where, the plot of the artifact is sort of over and done with. Now it doesn't matter going forward. Like now we can focus more on the synths, the X-Borgs take over the cube and they go scamper off into some other part of space that no one cares about, and we don't hear about them for a season and a half or something like that. So I think it's good timing for something like that to happen. And then it really ticks the Romulans off enough that they, start coming after Picard again. So I don't know. It may be, I don't know. Like I said, that's my swag. That's all.
Well, one of the things that was mentioned in this episode was that Picard says he's kind of surprised that the Romulans are the ones that are trying to reclaim Borg lives, or that they were victims. Did you guys have any takeaway from that, Eric? As far as, do you think that's gonna come into play later on why the Borg are the ones actually on, or why the Romulans are actually the one on the Borg doing this?
I think because they are one of the only well, I guess not one of the only, but I assumed they just kind of lucked into it. Like the cube just stopped in their territory.
What was the neutral zone though?
No, former neutral zone.
Well, you're right. It's the Beta Quadrant, but it's the former neutral zone. So it's still, at the time, was the neutral zone when all this happened. If the Romulans lost their homeworld, right? Why did all of a sudden the neutral zone become Romulan space?
We don't have a timeline on that, do we? I don't think they've ever gave us a timeline of when that changed.
Right. Well, it's saying if you don't have a homeworld, how do you have like a home base to be able to say, hey, this is now our area? I'm just saying in general, it's been 18 years. That's our timeline.
Well, you wouldn't lose your territory. I mean, you have more than one colony, obviously.
Right, but why did it not become Federation space? Why did it become Romulan space? Well, anyway, getting off my question.
I mean, you could go round and round with that. Who knows? But
right, but what I'm trying to tell you is the neutral zone was not Romulan space. It was the neutral zone.
How do you know? How do you know when the cube got taken over? What the status of the neutral zone was?
Oh my God! Never mind.
Do you know a year when the?
No, I'm telling you, it was the neutral zone in the Next Generation, and it said that in the show. It was the neutral zone, and they said that the artifact was in the neutral zone. That's my question. Never mind.
The other thing, though, that I forgot to mention, I want to roll back on a few notches here. Soji knew that spatial projector could go up to 40,000 light years. And it seemed like she had knowledge of what was going on. Again, pulling back to my thoughts that she may have some Borg tech on her or something of that. Maybe she is one of the SBs. What do you think about that? Maddox was building off that.
I'm calling no on that one. I don't have any. There's no part of me that thinks she's an XB.
I mean, she doesn't have any of the scars and stuff. How did she know about the Borg Queen teleporter though?
Don't know. I don't have a theory on that.
Did the planet that they're going to Napenta, I think is what it was said. Did anybody know anything about that planet?
No.
Obviously, from the preview, they're going to run into Riker, Indiana, which we already talked about. I'm pretty excited for the next episode. This episode was 54 minutes long, so almost 10 minutes longer than last week's. Man, I thought it went faster. Did you guys have the same feeling?
I mean, Yes and no. I think it didn't really let up, but I didn't also. I kind of waited too late to watch this, so I was sort of looking at the time, going, "Dang, I got to get on for a podcast." So no, it felt like I was watching the clock a lot.
I thought it flew. I looked down and I was already 35 minutes into it, and I'm like, "Oh my god!" I thought I'd only been sitting there for 5 minutes watching it, and I've noticed that a lot with these episodes. I wonder if it's the way they cut back and forth between scenes so much, if that's what's doing that, because we'll get like two quick scenes that are the same characters and they're just moving to different rooms normally, and then it'll cut back. In the middle of those, they'll cut to another scene, and then it'll cut back, which is a style you don't see a lot. Usually you have a longer scene where they play out everything they need to play out for those characters. But this whole how they filmed this and did it seems to be different, and I think it makes the episodes more faster pace. And I don't know if I'm more excited. I guess it just seems like the show goes faster. I don't know. I keep wanting more. All right, everybody. Thanks for checking out our podcast. Again, this is Star Trek Picard, episode title, The Impossible Box. Thanks for listening. Have yourself a great day.